You may have heard the bishops are doing a Eucharistic revival. I'm the chair of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Evangelization and Catechesis, and we've been charged on behalf of all the bishops in the United States to direct and lead a Eucharistic revival, which we hope will renew Eucharistic faith in the church at every level and affect the church at every level. And we want every parish to be involved in this Eucharistic revival, and we want you to be part of it. It's an incredible support that we've received from all the bishops, and we're very excited about what this might mean practically for you in your parish. So I'd like to share with you first where this revival came from, and second, why it's important, third, how you can participate. So even before the COVID-19 pandemic dramatically affected our church, which continues to affect us in dramatic ways, Bishop Barron, who at that point was the chair of the Committee on Evangelization and Catechesis, already had the idea of doing a Eucharistic revival. You see, many bishops were bothered by the Pew study that came out in 2019, which showed that less than 30% of Catholics believed in the real presence. And bishops were asking, what can we do about this? So Bishop Barron got together a group of bishops, and they began to discuss the possibility of doing a Eucharistic revival in January and February of 2020. Well, we know what happened in March of 2020. COVID hit. And we didn't even have the bishops meeting in June. And it wasn't until November of 2020 that we were able to begin to talk with the body of bishops about what it might mean for us to do a Eucharistic revival. We had a lot of support from the bishops, and so we spent all the spring of 2021 consulting national experts across the country about how we could do this revival in a way that would have the largest impact. We met with lots of different evangelistic leaders and leaders of apostolates to get their ideas and to get their support. We began then to work with apostolates and partners in order to make this revival a success. And here's one of the things I want to explain about this revival. We are not expecting that this is simply a top-down initiative. Rather, we want to be able to invite everyone to participate in their own way in this revival. Because what we're looking to do is to start a fire, not a program. In other words, we want people to be inspired and to be able to take this forward. We've had a ton of incredible partners step forward. Partners like Revive Parishes and the Augustine Institute, the McGrath Institute for Church Life, the Knights of Columbus, the National Federation of Youth Ministers, the National Association of Catholic Campus Ministers, our Sunday Visitor, the Franciscan University of Steubenville, leaders in the Charismatic Renewal, both in English and Spanish, and many more people. And basically, what I've been discovering as I'm trying to lead this effort and bring people together is that everybody believes this is the right time for a Eucharistic revival. People are really believing that right now we have a crisis in Eucharistic faith, but we can do something about it. So let's look at the plan. What's our goal? To renew the church by enkindling a living relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ in the Holy Eucharist. So we recognize that church renewal must come from a relationship with Jesus Christ, and the Eucharist is the source and the summit of this relationship. And we want people to be drawn deeper into this relationship with Jesus and therefore to be able to live Eucharistic lives. We really hope to impact the church at every level over a period of 3 years. We've already begun forming national leaders for this revival, and we want to begin to push this out starting in the spring. What's our vision? What do we want to see? We want to see a movement of Catholics across the United States healed, converted, formed, and unified by an encounter with Jesus in the Eucharist and sent out on mission for the life of the world. We hope at the end of these 3 years to have formed and sent more than 100,000 missionaries who are ready to share the love of Jesus in the Eucharist with everyone. Another question people ask is, why now? Of course, I already mentioned some of the negative reasons for why this revival is necessary. The 2019 Pew study, which showed these disturbing results about belief in the real presence. We realize there's some problems with that study, which is why we're redoing that study through CARA this fall. And of course, we're yet unaware of the impact of COVID-19 on our churches. We know that many people still haven't come back to church after being away from COVID-19. And we're all aware of the rapid number of people who are disaffiliating from the church and that we need to do something to stop disaffiliation and to invite people back. But there are many positive reasons for doing a Eucharistic revival. You know, over 200 years ago, the Church began a tradition of Eucharistic congresses. And that is that every few years, we should gather together and celebrate the incredible gift of the Eucharist. Why? Because the Eucharist is our greatest gift. And we have to rekindle the love that we have for the Eucharist in the Church. We have to remind people of the incredible gift of the Eucharist. It used to be in this country that we would have an international or national Eucharistic Congress about every 10 years. In the 1930s, there was an International Eucharistic Congress in Chicago. 500,000 people were at Soldier Field for the opening Mass. Almost 1 million people were at Mundelein Seminary for the closing Mass. In the 1940s, in Cleveland, Pope Pius XI, 1935 in Cleveland, Pope Pius XI addressed the crowd by radio. We want to do that at our Eucharistic Congress and have Pope Francis address us by video. In fact, many bishops have told me they were present at the last Eucharistic Congress we had in this country, which was an International Eucharistic Congress in 1976. At that event, a guy named Karol Wojtyła, Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, shared the stage with Mother Teresa. Cardinal Karol Wojtyła would of course become St. John Paul II. And many bishops tell me they were dramatically affected by that experience. Here's the main reason we want to do this revival. Right now, the Church in the United States needs unity and healing that can flow from rekindling our love for Christ in the Eucharist. And we need to rekindle the love of our people so that they can become missionaries of the Eucharist. How do we intend to do this? Based on our listening sessions and our research, we've developed what we call 5 strategic pillars. These pillars are important as you begin to think in your own parish about how I might implement the revival, because these pillars give us the way to implement the revival. First, we want to foster encounters with Jesus through charismatic proclamation and experiences of Eucharistic devotion. We recognize that coming to a deeper understanding and love of the Eucharist is not simply about catechesis. We need good catechesis, and we will do good catechesis. But we also have to appeal to the heart. And that means we have to proclaim the kerygma, the good news, and we have to provide people experiences where they can spend time with the Lord and have their hearts opened to encounter the Lord as a living person. Second, we want to contemplate and proclaim the doctrine of the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist through the truth of our teaching, the beauty of our worship, and the goodness of a life of service. We want to deliver clear teaching. We want to also raise and elevate our worship. And we want to show people that the Eucharist is meant to make a difference in the way we live our lives. So we want to deliver really good catechesis. And in fact, we hope to be able to do this virtually in every parish in the country. That is online, by providing excellent courses for people to access in small groups in parishes. The third one of our strategic pillars: empower grassroots creativity by partnering with movements, apostolates, educational institutions, and parishes. In other words, we realize we can't just expect that we can push this out through diocesan and parish structures, but we want to invite lots of people who love the Eucharist to help us with this. And that way, they too can be part of this revival. So one, for example, could think about the Knights of Columbus, which have foot soldiers in every parish. They've fully embraced this revival, and they want to help parishes be able to implement it. One could imagine charismatic renewal prayer groups who love the Eucharist, and when they're present in parishes, they can be part of helping this revival happen at the parish level. The fourth pillar, we want to reach the smallest unit: parish, small groups, and families. We believe the biggest impact of this revival will come in year 2, which we're calling the parish year, when we invite people to participate in small groups at the parish level. The Augustine Institute has donated their Formed platform for us to be able to use throughout this revival. We'll be able to produce and deliver for free excellent video resources that will help you run small groups, and we can provide training online for small group leaders. In this way, we can lead people through catechesis and study and faith sharing to a real encounter with Jesus in their small groups and in their families. And lastly, we want to embrace and learn from the various rich intercultural Eucharistic traditions. We want to express the Eucharistic love of the whole church and the various cultural traditions in our church. It's one of the beauties of being Catholic. Every culture loves the Eucharist, and they express it in different ways. For example, you might not know that the largest gathering of Catholics every year for Mass happens when the Vietnamese Catholics gather between 80,000 and 100,000 every summer in Missouri for their Eucharistic Marian days. The Vietnamese call all of their youth groups Eucharistic youth groups because they understand that if you teach young people to love the Eucharist, they'll stay in the church. So we want to learn from all these various cultural traditions so that we can share the wealth of our church. You know, this Eucharistic revival will culminate in a national Eucharistic Congress. And I want to talk a little bit about why that's important. As we've been listening to various groups and apostolates around the country, they say that this National Eucharistic Congress is what makes this a national movement. In other words, we're headed somewhere. We're on pilgrimage together. We're going towards a national event. In fact, when we've decided that this national event should be something different than what we've done in the past. Many of you might be familiar with the encuentro process, which was similar to what happens in the Eucharistic revival. It had a parish level. It had a diocesan level. Rather, we want this to be not just an event for leaders, but an event for missionaries. We want it to be more like World Youth Day or the World Meeting of Families, where literally 100,000 people can come together and encounter Christ together in the Eucharist and then be sent out on mission. We're already reaching out to various sponsors and foundations and donors to help with this. We're already investigating locations. We expect to announce that very soon. What will we do? The revival is a 3-year process. We want it to be 3 years because we want to make sure that it penetrates deep enough into the life of the church. So the first year will be a year of diocesan revival. The revival will begin on the Feast of Corpus Christi 2022. We hope that day to have Corpus Christi processions, Eucharistic processions, in over 100 dioceses across the country. And we want to, during this year, engage diocesan leaders and provide for diocesan events. We're mobilizing a corps of Eucharistic preachers who will be available to come to diocesan and parish events throughout the revival. We'll provide formation events for diocesan leaders and online training to form people who will be leaders at the parish level, but they can be formed in that first diocesan year. We hope that diocesan partners will have Eucharistic congresses at the end of that diocesan year. And during that year, there'll be a national media and social media campaign. We've already engaged almost all the Catholic media apostolates, and they're very grateful to participate in this bishop's Eucharistic revival. And we expect that some of the major events of the year will focus on the Eucharist. Things like NCYC and Focus Seek Conference and Steubenville Youth Conferences. They'll make the Eucharist their focus to give the sense that the whole country is doing a Eucharistic revival. And then in the summer of 2023, on the Feast of Corpus Christi, we'll end the diocesan year and begin the parish year. This is the year where we'll provide free catechetical resources for all levels of the parish, for young people and for Catholic schools, as well as for adults and small groups. We'll provide resources for having things like mercy nights in the parish where you can have adoration and confession, resources to bring together young people around adoration, resources to affect your religious education, to teach young people about the Eucharist. We have a publisher, for example, who wants to help us produce millions of copies of a little tract on the Eucharist, a little book that we could get in the hands of every Catholic to explain the beauty of our teaching on the Eucharist. Also, during this year, this parish year, we're planning to start a national Eucharistic procession. That is, we're going to have a monstrance with the Blessed Sacrament in it, and we're going to travel the country, going to every region. And during that year, we'll be having events in every region where the bishops will gather with young people or with immigrants or with racially diverse groups to pray for healing or with old people to give them encouragement. We'll have different events as we go around on this national Eucharistic pilgrimage, and the whole church in the United States will be able to follow this, all headed towards the National Eucharistic Congress in the summer of 2024, where we hope to have 100,000 Catholics gathered together in order to celebrate and proclaim the gift of the Eucharist. And we hope then to send those 100,000 people back out into our country to be missionaries, to transform our country with the love of the Eucharist. So how are we going to do this? Well, we already have a national executive team made up of leaders from around the country. They're organizing working groups with others, people who work in diocesan offices, evangelistic leaders, various kinds of point persons. And this team meets monthly to execute this revival over the period of the years. Now, whenever you propose a kind of large-scale movement, there's always concern about the cost. We're trying to do this as cost-effective as possible. We want to provide our resources free of charge. We want to be able to find sponsorship, even for Eucharistic preachers to be able to go out. So we promise to do this as inexpensive as we can, especially for you people at the parish level, so that in fact it's easy access for you. Now, how can you help? This is the real question I want to get to for you today. Especially those who work in parishes, we need your creativity. This revival is not really a program. It's about starting a fire, as I've been saying. There's no right way to do this. We all love the Eucharist, and we can all find creative ways to share that love. So we need to pray and think about how we might do this in our own parishes. Use the first year, the diocesan year, to be able to train and motivate your parish leaders so they're ready for the parish year. And also use that year to begin to develop your plan in your parish. Of course, reach out to your diocese to find out what they're doing and how they can help, how you can help. Think of ways that you can bring the strategic pillars of the Eucharist into what you're doing catechetically and evangelistically in the parish. There's plenty of things that we can do, right? Catechesis for adults and youth, small groups for the parish revival year, growing Eucharistic adoration and trying to encourage that in your parish, Eucharistic processions for all ages, Eucharistic retreats, mercy nights where we offer adoration and confession, days of Eucharistic service where we actually bring the goodness of the Eucharist by going out to serve other people. These are all ways that you can promote the Eucharistic revival in your own parish. So look for ways that you might do that with your own creativity. Of course, one of the keys to the Eucharistic revival being successful is that you and I have to revive the love of the Eucharist in our own hearts. I often tell priests what Fulton Sheen used to say, the Venerable Fulton Sheen, whom we hope will soon be a saint. He used to say that the most important moment of a priest's day, aside from the celebration of Mass, was a Eucharistic holy hour. And he committed himself while a seminarian to make a holy hour every day of his priesthood. And he said if every priest would do that, then he was sure we would remain faithful to our vocation. And so even to the lay people out there, I'd say, what can you do to increase your own Eucharistic devotion? Is it committing to an hour of adoration in an adoration chapel in your parish or in your community? Is it committing to spending some extra time in prayer or extra time in service? All of us have to be willing to light this own fire in our own hearts if we expect that this fire is going to spread. So I really want to encourage you to think creatively about how you might be involved in this revival. Look for more information, especially at our website, which is eucharisticrevival.org, and find ways that you in the parish can help be part of this movement, which I expect is going to have significant impact on the life of the Church in the United States. Thank you for all you do.